All right, welcome back, everybody. We'll talk about the feds and whether the Department of Justice and even the president getting involved in this in a second, but I want to bring you at home into our conversation. Let's start off with Desiree in Queens. Desiree, thank you for holding and answer our question tonight. Was justice served in the Trayvon Martin case?
No, it wasn't. Not at all. Not at all. This was a man that was an older man. He was a bigger man. That was someone's son, not just my son, but everybody, son of all nationalities, should be able to walk and get candy or whatever the case may be. I don't think this young man was served right. He lost his life. He's a baby. And my heart goes out to his parents because I'm a mom.
Desiree, thank you. Let's see what Sandy's got to say. She's calling us from Kingston. Go ahead, Sandy. You're on the line.
Hi. Yes, actually, just wanted to tell you, actually, I'm a Caucasian woman, and I'm also a child of the 60s, and I think this was one of the biggest travesties I've ever seen. When the state's attorney, after the verdict was delivered, when she got up there and said, this case has never been about race, I thought I was going to climb through my TV and strangle her because that was the most obscene thing I think I've ever heard. This has always been about race, and I agree with you, Richard. He was told to stay in his vehicle. If he'd done what the police told him, this never would have happened. But he had an agenda. He was stereotyping a young, innocent man, and in his mind, this young, beautiful young man who's now dead was a threat of some sort. But that's only in his depraved mind. And after listening to the state's attorney, I can understand, because all through the trial, now granted, I worked every day. I watched it as much as I could, but I couldn't believe
And Sandy, to that point, that press conference afterwards really rubbed a lot of folks the wrong way, that there didn't seem to be defeat on the face of the prosecution team. They seemed to say, this was a no-win thing. We just want to bring the facts out, as if that was enough. Here was a public service to at least hold the thing instead of seek a conviction. Am I misreading that?
No, 100%. My wife started turning the TV off, threw things at the TV, was getting absolutely infuriated.
Richard, the state attorney walked in, and you would think that she had just won the Super Bowl. And then I watched as the lead prosecutor in the case explain that he has tried over 300 murder cases. 300. He's won 300 and only lost 2. One of those 2, how could it be Trayvon Martin? How?
Again, it's easy to sit on the sidelines, but it didn't seem their heart was in it.
Well, it could be Trayvon Martin if indeed you are doing what you have been forced to do, and you just do what you have to do, no more, no less.
The passion
you
was
put
on the
it
defense
out
side.
That's
the
right.
passion was on the defendant's side, and that's what you saw in that post-conferences. I mean, the fury, having won the case, and you've been there, the fury that they came with, West and O'Mara, was horrifying, arrogant, unbelievable.
But it worked. You got to give him credit.
Well, where race, I think, definitely came in is the fact that, again, if Trayvon Martin had a gun and Zimmerman's following him and he's fearful that this grown man is following me and he turned and shot Zimmerman, it's not going to take weeks for Trayvon Martin to get arrested. That's the question. And at this point, you have an investigation which begins immediately instead of a many-week-old investigation that's only coming about because of public pressure. So those are the things that you look at in terms of the mindset. And the mindset from the beginning, despite the fact that the initial responding officer thought that Zimmerman should be charged, he wasn't. My understanding is Zimmerman's father is a judge, not that far away. That certainly probably played a role. So in addition to race, we're talking about status.
But also, Mayo, in light of all you just said, and this goes to your point, for the district attorney, the prosecutor, to come on and compliment the police agency as if the police agency had done a Herculean investigation, how wonderful they did, when they didn't do the basic stuff they needed to do. It's throwing dirt, frankly, in the Martins' family.
Now comes
with the police department going forward. I mean,
now comes the next step. And there's different avenues you can take. But as you guys probably remember, back in March of last year, the president himself inserted his voice into this conversation, and he did it in a pretty personal and emotional way.
And when I think about this boy, I think about my own kids. And I think every parent in America should be able to understand why it is absolutely imperative that we investigate every aspect of this. If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
Okay, and again, that was last March. Now, the White House, they're confronted with responding to a not guilty verdict, and the president said he will not play a role in determining whether or not the Justice Department is going to pursue federal charges for civil rights violations against Zimmerman.
He wanted to note that in the wake of the verdict, the strong passions the case had elicited could be running even higher, and that it was important to remember that we are a nation of laws and a jury had spoken. The president also wanted to ask every American to heed the call for calm reflection from Trayvon Martin's parents.
Okay. Now, the Attorney General, Eric Holder, today also sounded off saying that they may look into this. Do the 30-second legal for me, guys, here, because the standard to meet this threshold, it's really hard, especially with the absence of previously racist statements by Zimmerman, which certainly didn't come up at this trial. It's going to be really hard for the feds to get a conviction here, right?
Well, I'll tell you this: when you do bias crime investigations, and I used to do those for the district attorney's office, you don't look just for someone to yell out a racial slur. You look to see conduct. You look for lots of things, the total circumstances around an incident. But the problem that they're going to have here is that the law itself is much more difficult. You have to now show that he was singled out based upon who he happens to be, based upon his race, his age, his gender, something along those lines. It's a much harder burden. It really is.
I think it's an easy case. I've been in that division myself, in the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. I think this White House and this Justice Department shies away from these cases. This is not a difficult case. The words were stated. The highlight of the prosecution was the opening argument, the first 2 minutes of the opening argument, when he quoted what Zimmerman said, which informs the whole event. So to me, it's not that difficult.
I'm not saying how difficult it is, but I will tell you it's certainly much more difficult, and I think you would agree, than it was for the state to prosecute this case.
Richard, this is a loaded case. Making this quick. I mean, imagine this: the first black president, the first black attorney general of the United States, and you have a case like this.
And you already have Republicans,
it's a no-win
Congressman
situation
King and
for the
others
president.
saying that the president was injecting politics and everything. But let me ask you, Wilbur, with how this shook out in Florida, if the Justice Department doesn't take this on, is that an additional message to the black community?
Well, most definitely would be an additional message. However, I would prefer to believe that they're going to. They've already been investigating, so they have some information. If they, I think they said they'd interviewed something like 46 different people or something. Therefore, if they were going to say no, they would have said no immediately. I believe, and the NAACP from Florida has sent out to all of us who did not attend the convention, that we are to get people to sign the petitions. They have done an electronic thing for petitions to go to the Justice Department.
Already,
Tremendous number. Therefore, it's my belief that if nothing else, as it was with the prosecution in Florida, the pressure is going to be sufficient enough that they will have to at least do a complete investigation and probably move with some charges. Now, how zealous they're going to be as far as proving those charges, only time can tell. But I think that we're going to see something different.
And obviously this...
And then it will be about,
the
race.
Exposure that there could be, And as we said here, to say that this wasn't about race missed the point, and I think we all, not even hindsight, we said it from the beginning, that's what the prosecution, I think, missed. It wasn't a typical shooting. There was so much more that went into it, and that's why the nation was so mesmerized by this. Wilbur, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. All right, we are going to jump to break, but I want to thank everybody calling in. I know the line's still jammed here, so what I'd like you to do is go to our website and continue to make your opinions heard there. We're going to have a special mailbag on this segment tomorrow night. When we come back, though, we switch gears. Our own Dominic Carter today sat down with Elliot Spitzer, and he asked him, among other things, if there were more than one prostitute, and Mr. Spitzer couldn't really answer the question. We'll have that and much more in Dominic's 101 after this.